We know. Yeah, I told you it'd be a hot mess.
I would
All
expect
right, we're
nothing
live.
less.
Yeah, I mean, just like the email I sent out this morning with a mistake in it. Welcome everybody to a live edition of that conference, us, that people, those people. Love seeing everybody down in the chat. Chime in, say hi. Today is kind of we got something done early day. We released the speakers, some of which are on this panel, one of which is not, but we still love James Quick. So congratulations. We do. We love you. Congratulations to everybody, and thank you for your support. Today is meant to be kind of a let's talk about community, kind of celebrate the fact that we have just announced the speakers. We're a few months away from a conference and talk about all things there. So if you've got questions in the chat, drop them in so we can riff on that, have a little fun with it. And let's start with a quick round of introductions. And I'm going to start with you, Taylor, Mr. Beautiful Hair. Who are you? Say it quick.
Yeah, my name is Taylor Desson. I'm practice lead of Vaco Technologies Global Solutions Division, where basically my job is to match top talent with remote first companies across the country and all things tech, and also build community among engineers and tech professionals across the country.
Where do you live?
I hail from Music City, Nashville, Tennessee. I hate country. Don't ask me about country, but that is where I am. I'm actually 25 minutes outside of Nashville on a horse farm. So I do horse things sometimes.
And you
Homer. And he hates the country and music, but he's got a cowboy hat and a horse.
Lil Nas X.
I didn't see that one coming.
Adam.
Homer.
Clark, what's good, man?
You're what's good.
Hi, everybody.
Tell the people who you are.
I am Homer Gaines. I am a staff UI engineer and accessibility specialist. So I like to build things on the front end and make sure that everybody has equal access to being able to use them. And I like to go around speaking at conferences, teaching about accessibility and letting folks know why it's important for them to care about it.
And where do you call home?
I call home right now, Atlanta, Georgia.
All righty. James Q. Quick, the infamous, the famous TikTok star, YouTube guy asking people to buy products. Who are you, James?
I think that was like the sum of it right there is basically it. What's up, everyone? James Q. Quick. I am a content creator for the last 8 years in the web development space, and I live in Memphis, which is 3 hours away. I've been texting Taylor to see when it would be a weekend to meet up for lunch and hang out in Nashville sometime soon. And unfortunately, I will not be at that conference in the summer, although I hate to miss it.
Reason.
But yeah, so wife is pregnant, due in May for people who don't know, and just like insists on like, we can still go. I'm like, why don't we at least a month to just not do that and be at home? So that's, if you don't know my wife, now you know a lot about her personality, which is an amazing thing is what I'm saying. But
to be fair, if you have some local support and you can dump child off, it may be a good week to get away and just sleep.
Could be. Clark says it'd be a good opportunity to get away and go sleep.
That is what I use
at
conferences
that
for
conference.
now. Sleep.
Taylor does go to sleep early.
He does. He has a very strict regimen.
I did like how when he said that we could still go, both Homer, Becca, and I just kind of shook our heads like, no, you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Now, it's a beautiful thing, James. You will much enjoy it after you get out of diapers. JD.
Work on that sleep.
What's going on, everybody? My name is JD Hillen. I am a software engineer at Garmin here in Kansas City, where we do GPS and wearables and fish cars and all kinds of cool stuff. So I'm a solutions engineer here, and really big into community. I've been doing this for probably the past like 2.5 years, like trying to get involved with people, and I so much out of going to conferences that I just started trying to do them more often. And so I've been speaking at a few select places around the U.S. over the last 2 years, and found that like 2017 somewhere something.
Yep.
I just messaged Clark. I'm like, hey, I want to be on your show, and he's like, I don't know who you are, and I'm like, yeah, exactly, perfect. So,
And it bloomed into this.
yeah, and it bloomed into this. So, really looking forward to this summer. I always have a great time at that, and yeah, trying to figure it all out.
And lastly, my homie from the north, Becca.
Hey, I'm
How are
Becca.
you?
I am doing fantastic today. I am from Ohio, and the sun is shining right now, and it's warm here. We get some rain later, but my background, I'm a career changer. I spent 10 years teaching college English before coming into tech, where I've done some front end, a little bit of mobile, and I started a tech community called Virtual Coffee. And right now, I'm kind of doing the independent thing.
And kicking ass, as all of you are. And part of the reason for bringing each of you on here is there's a whole bunch of things that happen, I think, in the background that people don't necessarily realize. Conversations, text messages, support for one another. And I think that's, we talk about community, we talk about getting involved and really stepping out. That's the thing that I don't know that people necessarily realize. I know, I don't know, it was a Friday, I was joking around with you, James, about, paid products on YouTube, but here I'm reading the comments after a video where I was like, hey, shit, that looks pretty good. Like, I think I could use that for the, what is it, $100, $90? I'm like, that'll at least save an hour's worth of time. And then you look at the comment, it's nothing but, haterade about why should I buy this product? I can make my own. I should have a browser. And it's like, come on, it's not helpful. So, community is definitely more than just, showing up at a conference and sitting in a chair. There's a lot more to it. So, when Homer, were you just at Orlando Code Camp?
Yep, sure was. Yep,
So I know-
back up there.
I know there's a bunch of jokers down there. When you think about getting, going to something like that, what's your kind of approach to your time, kind of making it the most valuable for you and others?
Yeah, well, one of the things that I'm always thinking about is, I'm going there for a reason. I'm going there to speak. And the purpose of speaking is so that whomever may be listening is going to learn something. So the first thing that's on my mind is just to make sure that I'm in the correct headspace to deliver on that goal itself. Outside of that, me, you know how I am. I like to talk to people. I like to bring people in. I like to make sure that we are having those conversations, whether it's around accessibility or whatnot, but just having those conversations that makes everyone else feel included in the talk as I'm down there. So whether it's before the talk, during the talk, or after the talk, even when I present my work, I let folks know if they have questions or whatnot in the middle of it, feel free to ask. Just raise your hand, because 9 times out of 10, what they're asking about is what I'm talking about at that very moment. So the context is still fresh, and I just roll their question into the overall conversation, and then I offer to bring others into that conversation as we go. So that's what I'm trying to do. I try to build that ease of community with inside the talk itself, which kind of takes the edge off, not only just for me, but it also allows others to lean into, a topic that a lot of people try to avoid often. Sometimes it can be divisive, So that's where my head is at when I go down there. And then it's great to, run into old friends like you all.
How often, and I'll just kind of open this to the floor, how often would you say people engage with you after an event?
Every time.
Or how many? Is it a lot?
I can count them on one hand, on one hand. Now my social might blow up, whether it be Twitter or LinkedIn. those will blow up. You know, folks will reach out, but I can still count on one hand.
Becca, how about you?
That's a good question. I probably a handful of people every time. I would say that's probably pretty generous. A handful of new people who I don't know already. But I feel like there's that core group of people that continues to grow, right? That like becomes part of that close network of people that you continue to keep in touch with and support and all of the things that they're doing. And then they're the people that you go up to and talk to at other conferences that you see.
James, how do you feel like, kind of building off of this, how do you feel like your life or interactions have changed with folks now that you're the quintessential content creator?
All of these and like put the stickers up on my wall with how you describe me. It is like really interesting to be recognized. Like it's kind of a cool thing. It's also weird sometimes, but I've had a few moments of like being somewhere completely random and someone being like, "Hey, do you do YouTube?" Really cool of that was once in Berlin, like on the street in Berlin, and then once recently in New York City, like by the World Trade Center, just walking around downtown. And somebody was like, "Do videos." And that's like, there's like the egotistical part of me that's like, that's super, super cool. And I love to tell that story, which may be annoying to people. But there's also just like, it's so much more of an excuse to meet people. Like I'm already pretty outgoing. I usually can like start a conversation at a table with people that I don't know. And I try to do that. I also have a growing group of friends, like Becca said, that I see on a semi-regular basis a couple times a year. But it's like so much more of an easy conversation starter. And then more importantly, I think it like helps justify all the things that I do. Cause I get people that come up to me like, "Oh, you're the reason like I transition into tech," or "You're the reason that promises in JavaScript make sense to me." And that, especially Clark,
Nobody
in
said
comparison to the
Nobody said
a
that.
couple, at least a couple.
They were lying.
But whatever, it still makes me,
Yeah.
those comments in contrast to a fair amount of shitty comments on YouTube, like that's the kind of stuff that makes it worthwhile. So I love hearing people's success stories, like just in general, but even more so if there's like some bit of the content I've created that's had an impact on them.
Yeah, if anybody would take anything away from this, I think we have to spread more gratitude across all of the platforms to the people and really squash out some of this negative shit. Because, when I texted you that Friday night, I knew exactly how you felt, right? And it sucks. It sucks when you put stuff in and then the shitty comments come in. Taylor, Mr. I don't even know where to put this. Yeah,
Come on, Clark.
The Gary V of
Johnny Bravo.
of recruiting, got the D-Rock and everything. How you have a very integrated sense into the community where you're, to use your words, the wolf in sheep's clothes. Mm-hmm. How do you feel like your kind of network community, like, are you the oddball? Do you feel like the oddball?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think the amount of question marks and criticism that I've really experienced over the last 3 years has been fascinating. Especially with really my focus is just to give back, right? I mean, that's kind of been my focus, and it will always be my focus. And it's fascinating that people don't like that. It's fascinating that people want to control the narrative themselves. They don't like the way I speak sometimes. I have been criticized for my cursing. I have been criticized for being out there, just the way I do things. "Oh, you're ridiculous. You have a video guy following you." But it really comes back to helping people. And even today on my live show, some guy commented that he got a job offer from connecting with somebody in the chat on my live. And at the end of the day, like, I don't give a fuck what people say about me, because that is the most important part right there.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, this is why I do it. I mean, in fact, a lot of these relationships here that we have on this call are through all of us introducing one another to other people.
Yeah, I mean, I'm only here because of James. To be totally honest, James made the connection to me and you, and so
Yep.
you know, it's just your network is so freaking important right now.
Unfortunately, I won't take that personally by any stretch. But JD, you told the story about 2017, 2018, somewhere around in there. I had this thing which I'm bringing back, where anybody could just kind of jump on the streams and kind of re-inspired from what Taylor's been doing. But it was a daily stream of like, hey, let's have a conversation about things. What was it that drove you to kind of send that email? Because I think that that's a kind of important hump or a scary hump for most people to say, how do I get involved, or what do I do?
Right. So about that time, I was, first looking into starting to present at conferences. I had a local meetup group here in town, and it had gone really well. It grew from, about 5 people. But I wanted to do something else. I wanted to speak to a larger audience. So I started looking for places that would give people an opportunity. Started looking at that conference, KCDC, a couple other ones around the U.S. But I had connections, none, knew nobody, and I was just like, what's the worst that this guy's gonna say? No. All right, well then I'll move on. Like, I was just looking for a platform, and as as egotistical as this is, it was definitely about me, because I had a story and I had a presentation and I wanted to teach other people about it. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna send this email, and it turns out we had a great conversation. The pandemic hit, which obviously that wasn't fun, but a couple of years later was able to come up to that Wisconsin and give the presentation that I wanted to give. And I mean, it was all based on the opportunity that you gave me to do that. And what's a better way to introduce yourself to somebody than just to send them an email and just say, hey, what's going on with this? I'd love to be a part of it. I've always that will reach out to people, and especially for help, or if I have a thing that I want to get done. I'm no expert. I'm no development expert. I can't code in every single language. I'm a creator, but I have ideas. I have stories for people. So I'll reach out to those experts, because you can learn something from them. It has nothing to do with any kind of like personal ego or any, like, I left that stuff behind a long time ago. And it's more about making connections and just seeing where it takes you. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't know that sending an email in 2018 to be on somebody's YouTube podcast would end up, me being able to speak yet again at that, and being invited here, and I'm just along for the ride, and let's just see where it takes us.
Yeah, I wanna commend you, actually. Is that the right word? Or send a little bit of praise to you. You had reached out. I try to have office hours, help speakers kind of craft their talks and rework and whatnot. Yeah. And you're one of the few who have jumped in and said, hey, I've got this thing. What would it, what do you think? How would it change? And I'm blown away. I put a thing out this morning. We've got 500 people submit to speak every year. And, on a couple of hands is the number of people who reach out for help, which blows me away that more people aren't like, hey, can I just get a second set of eyes on something to see, how did you take this? Are the words good? As somebody who's read probably 10,000 abstracts, can tell you there's a lot of bad ones.
Yeah, that's my point. Why not to the people that do this all the time, that have more information than you? Like, out, I had a theater background from high school. I played in a band for a long time. I did public speaking, high debate in high school. So like I'm very comfortable being in front of. That doesn't bother me at all. In fact, it kind of invigorates me. But at the same time, like I want to make sure that what I'm presenting is the best it possibly can be, and other people might have thoughts on that. You know what I mean? Like I'm not one of those people that is like, this it's done. Only I can present that. Like anybody can present this stuff. You know what I
And-
mean? It's your personal connection to the story of why you're presenting it that really fascinates me, and that's what I'm trying to portray when I'm doing this stuff.
Yeah, and I think, to that point, if you want to call conferences and blogs and all those things as digital gardens, and Taylor's got one, I've got one, James has got one. My goal is to make sure that you all grow and get connected, right? Taylor's goal is to make sure people find jobs and can get placed. So me trying to make sure that you are the best that you can be is a win for you, me, and everybody who's around. Becca, as the person, I want to try to use your words. What did you call it? Serial career changer? Was that what you said?
I don't know if I said that, but sure, if it's.
Like, you were in education, you're in tech. How I have to imagine that there's not much of a community vibe in the teaching of English versus in tech. How has how have you changed as a result of that?
Yeah, so there in academia, there was no community, and I tried really hard to build that. I was an adjunct, which made it even worse. So part-time teaching, and it was a real challenge to try and get anything going. And one of the reasons I ended up making the decision ultimately to move over to tech, because I had been learning to code. I really enjoyed what I was doing, but I didn't seek out a career change. That decision was made for me because of the community in tech, because I was welcomed with open arms. There was so much support. There were so many people that were willing to see me grow and support me in that growth. And that wasn't like anything that I had experienced before. It was such an important experience to me because as an educator, I wanted to grow. I wanted to have feedback on things. I wanted support to do more. And I didn't have any of that, which is, seems really silly. Like in an academic institution, you think that's what would be happening. And it wasn't. And so here it was. It started on Twitter for me. Having that support was made such a huge impact on me that I knew that that's where I wanted to be.
You mentioned Twitter, which can be a dumpster fire of hell, but
Nah, what you talking about?
I think one of the great things that we have in this realm of tech is the fact that we all can connect regardless of where we're at, and there seems to be this willingness to help one another or share what we've got, and sometimes that there's some motive behind it, and there's always sleazy people everywhere. But we also get to connect with people who are across the pond, whichever pond you so choose, not just in the United States, but abroad. How have and I'll throw this at you, Homer, first. How has your kind of international conversations been? Do you have much of an international,
Actually,
I don't want
do.
to say community, but like ties? And
Yeah.
does it make you rethink about what you do here in your daily life?
Yeah, actually I do. In fact, a young lady who I mentor, she actually lives in the UK. And it's wild because when she came to me, I didn't even realize that I was on her radar. I knew who she was. I knew who Amina was. And this was back when, the blue checks actually meant something. She was already award winning in her field and everything like that. So I'm like, okay, homegirl's fire. And then she reaches out to me, hey, I want to learn more about accessibility. Would you be my mentor? And I'm like, huh? Sure, cool, humbling. Thank you very much. And, so I've had a chance to meet her, but I've met several other people through just the community, the dev community like this, speaking at different conferences, whether, especially during the pandemic, man, when a lot of the conferences were virtual, but just being able to make those connections with everyone and stay connected. I think the longest connection though, which is wild, talk about community that turns into family. One of my best friends, his name's Vaughn. He lives in Milton Keynes. I met him at a Flash Forward conference. Right. Yeah, go back. Go way back. And we've been family ever since. So, from that aspect, the international community is just as welcoming and just as loving as, the ones that we have here stateside. It's like we all get involved in each other's families. I mean, JD's sitting up here asking about the kids and likewise, So,
Yep.
yeah, it's a great thing. And I love it. And I hope it continues to grow. And I hope it continues to stay a positive force in everything that's going on.
Yeah, I really, God, I really hope that people get out of this pandemic funk. This is a beautiful time to get connected. I know that, all of us have been to multiple conferences within the past few years. And I think the level of engagement that I've seen is higher than it's ever been before. I think things have changed. I think they've changed for the better. And tech is very much lagging behind in the want to be out, but there's, I guess, new families being forged, which I think is pretty cool, and the ties across that. So there's a few questions in the chat that James is now trying to use his YouTube ninja skills. People are asking, what are some of the things that you've learned from being a presenter? What should you avoid? What have you learned kind of across your speaking journey? I'll start first with Taylor, since you're the person who doesn't fit the most in this realm.
Where do you see this chat at? Because I don't see it.
YouTube.
Oh, you have to go to YouTube?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was the question again, Clark? Can you repeat the question again?
I love you, Taylor. What have you learned from speaking in the past that you would change or not change? What's gone well? What hasn't gone well?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, you got to be right. I mean, I think at the end of the day, like people latch on to what you say more than you think they do. And that's something that I've really taken for granted. Like when I started kind of going into these conferences, I mean, again, like as a recruiter, like no recruiter was speaking at these engineering conferences. I was like, why not? Like, I want to do it. Like, it sounds great. And so, I remember my very first talk getting up there and being like, why am I even here? And then, and then at the end of the session, it was obviously very well received. And so, I would tell people, kind of going what you're saying too, Clark, like get involved. I'm really big on being fearless right now. Like the people who are uncomfortable and who are fearless when it comes to networking and speaking and going about their daily lives in regards to expanding the network are the ones that are going to be the most successful. I'm sure it was not comfortable for James Q. Quick to go out on his own to be a content creator, right? I'm sure Homer's had some really awkward conversations and some awkward moments speaking, right? I'm sure JD with, he's had some really probably awkward conversations getting rolling, right? And Becca, same, right? I mean, like I've seen Becca full on cry up on stage and I loved it, but it was uncomfortable. Right? Let's just call it what it is. It was uncomfortable, but it was beautiful. And I find that most of the uncomfortableness from people, especially all of us sitting here, and listen, I mean, I'm going through some uncomfortable shit at work right now, right? And what I've noticed is that if you can get uncomfortable, people are actually going to love you more than you think. And because I think people are so desperate for vulnerability, especially in the social media age we live in. And I try to be as authentic as I feasibly can on all my social media. And I would just encourage people to be fearless, get out there, and to make new friends. And that's what I've learned through the conference circuit, quote unquote.
Becca, as the only woman on this panel, what would you say you've learned, or what would your advice be?
Yeah, I think kind of going along with what Taylor said, I am terrified every time I get up on stage. And so it's definitely not fearlessness, but it's just doing the thing that you're afraid of, right? And so I think that all comes down to it. And when you push yourself outside of your comfort zone, I think that's one of the most important things that you can do. Like, up until the minute I went on stage, I was terrified in January, right? And but then you get up there and it becomes a totally different experience. And one of the most important things to remember, I think, is that the audience is on your side. They want to see you succeed. And I have never been in a talk where there wasn't one person in the audience that I could look to. And so I kind of like scan the whole audience. And in those moments where I feel like I'm going to run off stage now, because it happens to me every single time, I find that person that I know will like give me just a nod or a reassuring smile or something like that. And then I don't run out of the room. I stay there and I keep going. And, you know, you can do that, and you might feel bad afterwards. Almost every single talk I give, I'm like, that was terrible. But you learn from it, you grow from it, and then you also think about what the feedback is. And 9 times out of 10, I get a lot of really positive feedback on what I'm doing. I'm just way harder on myself than anybody else out there. And so just, you know, keep that in mind, especially if you're hard on yourself, that the audience is rooting for you. They want to be there. They want to hear your story and what you're willing to share with them.
It's funny, I always get asked, you know, why don't we do like speaker ratings? And I want to be like, you know what you did wrong. Like, you don't need somebody to tell you, you know.
Hold on, real
No,
quick
go.
before you go into that. So you brought up, you know, that whole, you know what you did wrong. And that takes me back to when I used to do a lot of stage performances or whatnot. And like, our group would get up there and we were performing some new material. And you get up and all of a sudden there's everyone, and you are going through your lyrics and you mess up a line and you come off and it feels like you just absolutely bombed everything. And I remember our manager stopping us, and he said, who all has heard this song before? And we're like, no one. Exactly. No one heard this. The only person who knew the lyrics were you. To everyone else, it's their first time hearing it. And did you hear anybody stop cheering for you? Did anybody go, boo, you messed up? No. Instead, they still supported you, and you guys rocked the show, and that's that. All you do now is go back and you rehearse more so that you're more confident when you go out on stage and you don't flub. But I got news for you. You're going to mess up every single time, because there is no such thing as a perfect show. And I was like, all right, cool, bet. And I still rock with that to this day.
Yeah, you got to do, you know, even when you're speaking on the same thing, you know, the first time to the sixth time, the sixth is going to be drastically different, you know, from the first time. So I'm in a funny place these days where I feel like the community is like dying and growing all at the same time. Code camps have gone away. Like, I was super pumped to see this weekend at Orlando Code Camp happened. You know, there's this segment of people who have left school, say in 2019, and have literally never ever been to a tech event or a community, either because it wasn't there as an option, they never got introduced to it, whatever it be. But I'm in this weird place where I ask myself, is what we're doing, that conference, that whatever you want to call, you know, my days, is it even valuable anymore, right? Are we still relevant, given that there's other things going on in the industry which would seem to say, like, hey, James is the content creator, like, everybody go see James. And, you know, I made a comment the other day, like, if you're not better than what you Google, right? If people can watch James on the shitter, why does somebody want to get off the shitter to go see him in person, right? And I'm not you, James. I'm using you as an
No,
example,
I get it.
which
Oh yeah, yeah.
is very.
Now I know where you watch my content, by the way.
Yes. Well, I mean, I spend a lot of time in there. What do we need to do or do we need to do anything? Does there need to be a concerted effort to bring things back? Does it need to happen organically? Is there an issue? Am I overly sensitive? I'll start with JD.
Why you just put me on the spot like that, huh? All right.
I'll move to James.
No, it's fine. No, I've experienced, this in the last 2.5 years. Like I've been going to conferences for a long time. Never really had much of a desire to present to them until a couple years ago. But I always got something out of it, regardless of what the conference was, whether it was big or small, or they had, a stacked lineup or a bunch of people I've never heard of. I always got something out of it. And going home, it just being there for 2-3 days just reinvigorates me of like why I chose this profession. It's a reaffirmation of like I know I'm doing the right thing. I may not be doing all the right things, but the major thing I'm doing it right. And where that leads me, who knows? But I only get that feeling after going to an event with other like-minded people. Now I've been to bad events, I've been to amazing events, and I've always gotten something out of each and every one of them. Whether it was a connection, a new friend, new technique of building something, there's always value there. It's just what you need to reassess of why you're going to these things. Now, there are some people out there that, they don't want any part of the at all. They'll just get their content from YouTube and that's it. But there are people out there like me and Homer and Taylor and everybody here that desire that kind of human connection too. And I think that's really important. I think it's really powerful because we all know what it's like to not have that. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to go back to that where I'm stuck in the house with just my children. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love my children. But like I want to hang out with Homer and watch his kid do some crazy stuff. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
I want to get away from my real life for a minute and make some new friends.
So I'm gonna throw this now at you, James, and I think I do generally think that what you do day to day is hugely important. I think it pushes the community, the people, everybody to level up their game. I think one of the best places, technology catches up. We weren't able to do this kind of shit 5-6 years ago, like we are today. I mean, here we're all in a web browser. Like, who would have ever thought that you could sit here and be streaming and recording and talking and all this crap, even if I do it crappily. What do you how do you see yourself as somebody who's creating content and showing up? I mean, you're still going to conferences. You've decided that that's equally important as your Discord channel, your online presence, your travel time. Where do you think this is at?
I imagine a lot of people have forgotten the impact of being in person. Like we went through this phase of every conference went virtual and it quote unquote worked. Like it
Terrible.
across, but it's just not the same. Like there's benefits to it. And it was great that it was more accessible for people across the world in theory for like the stuff that's going on. That's great. But there's something very different being in person. And so there's several different perspectives that I can. And Morrison in the chat has nailed. He said that he was ready to quit creating content until he went to that conference in Austin back in January. Totally reinvigorated. up than ever before. Like I can't tell you how much inspiration I get from just being around people and hearing the amazing shit that they do on a regular basis. And if anyone out there looks up to me, like every person I talk to that is doing anything, I'm looking up to them. Like that's so freaking cool, and I get inspired to do that. And I think we forget like what that feels. Leave a place and just be ready to go freaking crush it. And you only like you need to get out of like your routine to be able to do that. And a great way to break up, like where I sit at a computer 40 hours a week and write code, or I do whatever Taylor does and try to get people to write code, like whatever it is, break that up. Something in person where you have the opportunity to learn, you have the opportunity to be around people to get inspired and see things that you hadn't seen before. And inspiration piece, like all of you specifically have inspired me, but like another specific situation that I was in November, I over dinner with Sarah Drasner, Jason Langsdorff, Angie, what's Angie's last name? Jones, thank you. I sat at Colby Fay. I sat at a table with them, and these are all people like that I've looked up to for so long. I mean, it's lights of my career, and to sit around them and to just have open conversation and feedback and ideas, like that sort of stuff, is literally game changing. When you can just use it as inspiration and influence on the stuff that you do. So I think people have just forgotten, to be honest. I think people that have gone back to in-person conferences, they walk away realizing that, but a lot of people probably haven't given it that chance because they just forget that it's a significantly different impact than just watching online. Like a virtual talk, to your point earlier about like you can learn stuff on YouTube, not that different from watching them recording later on YouTube. The being able to talk to them in person after the fact and actually get to know them more, like that.
Yeah. Taylor, you have really upped the game on content creation. You took a talk, pulled off the whole Gary Vee thing where you take an hour and split it up into 600 different bites and send it out. Like where do you feel across the two? Because you've got a hand in like each different track of things.
So yeah, I mean, so I'm a huge introvert. You know, I go to bed at 8, right? I mean, kind of my schedule at that conference was, you know, I'm up at 8 and I go to bed at 8, or I'm in my hotel room at 8. You know it's bad when you got other fellow nerds making fun of you for not staying out late. You know you real introvert when you got other developers making fun of you, which I love it. I would encourage people to do this. First off, I've never considered myself a creative until recently, and I've noticed getting out of the house actually fuels a lot of my creativity. I think one of the things I've heard consistently from engineers working alongside of you all and with y'all and listening to y'all is a lot of problems that are solved from an engineering side happens when, you know, I'm taking a shower or walking the dog or on the toilet. Right. And I think there's a reason for that. I've actually talked with a lot of engineering leaders about treating engineers like athletes, right? Like time off, giving them a brain break, because I think one thing I've noticed because of COVID is everyone's overworked. Right. Let's just face it. We're all overworked. I'm overworked. Right. And so I know that if you deal with anxiety, I am dealing with anxiety right now. Right. Like I'm in counseling for it. I'm huge on mental health and very open. I'm totally fine to talk about it. And I've noticed that COVID has gotten me into this place where I feel anxious leaving the house. Right. There have been times where I've gone to a coffee shop and I've been anxious because I'm not like at home. That I leave and go back home, right? So I get it, right? And I'm saying that to let y'all understand that I deal with the same things, but I am telling you this. I have never once regretted going to a tech conference, and I'm usually 16 times more fired up coming back home, and I have more creative juice. I have more passion for what I do. I have new connections that I want to pour into, right? And so I would encourage everybody, especially, you know, especially people who have never gone to one, just show up. Listen, the tech community is beautiful. I am a recruiter, and I feel like I've been accepted among engineers. The tech community is a beautiful, beautiful thing. Like when I go to parties in Nashville now, when I ever do go to parties, which is very rare,
all the time,
I have to and it's usually my music friends, which I'm not in the music scene anymore, so it's really awkward. Like literally, I seek out like, are you in tech? What do you do? Are you in tech? Are you in tech? Because the conversation is different. There's no judgment. There's just kind of this free flowing back and forth. And so again, I would just encourage you all to get out and to be present and to get out of the house.
So I'm going to ask you all to ask each other a question. So I'm going to flip a bit. And Becca, if you could ask anybody on this panel a question, what would you ask?
It's not fair. You put me on the spot.
I mean, you got to do you.
I guess. Well, let me think about this for a second. Maybe if you could share, and I'm not going to pick on anybody in particular, but if there was a moment that you felt like you failed, and then you were able to come back from that moment. And I think that everybody's kind of talked a little bit about that, but I think that it's very important to be able to share those moments too, because we do have a lot of curated social media posts where we don't dive into like what did it take to get to this moment.
Well, I don't know if that was directed at me, but I will kick it off. If I'm being my truest self, I feel like we're failing right now. We took on Texas. It's a second event. People in my, I don't want to call it peer group. I don't know if that's a thing, but psychos like me who run conferences, who kind of sit in the middle of big corporate and code camps, taking on a second event was a huge gamble. We've lost a lot of money. It was a weird time to do it. And I feel like I've failed the community, the speakers, and everybody involved. And it's, circumstantial. We can say like, sure, it's COVID and this and that and the other, or maybe it's not the right time, or maybe it's new market, new place. Maybe our brand's not there. Maybe we're irrelevant. Like I can go all over the board. But that's, if my job is to put asses in seats and to grow the community and nobody shows, that's an issue, right? That's not a sustainable thing. Having said that, I also think that Texas was one of our best events. Like, I think it was one of the closest things. I think it was, deeper connections that came out of there. There was more vulnerability than ever. There was more time to hug and chat and do the things. But I don't know. Taylor, yeah, I'm seeking help. It's fucking hard right now.
Another fail in there, and I don't know what the I don't know that it's not in the process ongoing, but on YouTube for me, like my stats across the board, which is that's the thing people know me for, down by far. I don't have down by 2x, I guess. If you look at average view, income from ads and growth, subscriber growth, it's just down, and it's been at least cycle of just gradually doing this. So this doesn't translate to I don't know which way the camera is flipped. This is the down angle.
No, you're actually going backwards.
Yeah. But it is super defeating. I mean, Clark, I imagine you have similar feelings of you must have a lot of confidence, at least leading up to struggles recently, of having done amazing and gotten thousands of people to an in-person conference. And I have 170,000 YouTube subscribers, and most people look at wow, that's amazing. And I got a question recently of I thought about a question recently of how would you gauge if you've made it? And for me, I don't think there's ever an I've made it. I've goals. Getting to 100,000 subscribers was a goal, and before that, I would have looked at someone with 100,000 subscribers, and I would have been that person, they're good. They're going to continue to grow. They're going to get to 1 million, and my subscriber growth is very, very flat, right? And so for me, I wake up with doubts when I put out videos. I tell Jess this video did terrible again, and YouTube shows you video ranks out of your previous 10. And so to see 7, 8, 9, 10 repeated means they're that much worse than even the ones that we thought were bad a month ago or whatever. But for me, it's just it's forcing confidence like maybe I need to do reevaluating like what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, what can I tweak, what can I get better at. But I can't just do YouTube. Like that's the thing that's really important to me. It's what I love, and that's what I'm gonna continue to do. And Clark, it's gonna be, I imagine, like similar for you there.
Hold on a second, Taylor.
Okay, because I have a thought.
Yep. You mentioned something about how do you know when you've succeeded, and it's funny. All of my succeededness, like if I write them up on the wall, they're all intangible. When was the first time an adult went to a kid speaking? I said this morning to somebody, like, I feel like we've made it when everybody on this call knows that if they're part of the community, kind of like Taylor, I created a platform to be here. If you got a job, I succeeded. My thing is, if you're part of that, you grew, your family's better, you're better, and there should be no question as to kind of your, like, the $1,000 that it takes to come should be a drop in a bucket to say, yeah, I'm gonna get exponentially more out of that without even thinking about it. So the numbers for me come into like a financial state. If I can't meet the numbers, right, then I can't make it and provide more value. In your case, if you can't meet the numbers, you don't get paid, you can't produce content. Taylor, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I would just caution people, and I've talked to a lot of people about this, about starting with content, and because I know I preach that when it comes to the job search, and I've talked to a lot of people, and they're like, well, I can't do what you do, and hell, I look at James, and I go, I can't do what James does, right? And it's so funny how we all kind of compare each other, right, up the ladder, I guess you could say. I will tell you this: conference size does not matter. If you are evaluating to go to a conference based off how big it is, I would argue and say the smaller ones are more fun. Some of the most meaningful relationships that I've had came out of that conference in Austin this year, and I'm not saying that because I'm on this call. I'm truly being serious. And then Magnolia JS last year was incredible. And I've met, and those are small conferences, right? 200-300 people, right? But what I would caution you as well is I would not get caught up on follower count. And I'm telling myself that consistently because I get insecure, right? I see James with the follower count, right? I see, other people in the industry with so many more followers. But when it comes down to it, y'all, and I've read articles about this, about the TikTok influencers and how they can't even sell 5 T-shirts, right? when they do a brand deal. And it's about depth, not width, right? If you can have 100 people that will buy from you, that's pretty powerful. And so I would encourage you all, if you're getting you started your content journey, to which conferences should you attend? It's about depth. It's not about width. And so I would just keep that in mind.
Super awesome question. Okay, go ahead, Homer.
I was just going to say, it's interesting that, from that aspect, excuse me, told you, voice is going. Giving accessibility talks, they're not always the most popular, most shiny, glitzy thing that's at a conference. And a lot of times the attendance form is low. And that can be somewhat disheartening. Even if one person shows up, though, still the show must go on. You still go.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
That show was going on long before people came.
Exactly. But as content creators and educators, we're doing this. We're putting our time in, and it feels like when that happens on a consistent basis, all right, am I just spinning my wheels now? Is this really having the impact that I feel it should have? And I noticed that at a couple of conferences, my numbers started to drop. I'm like, all right, so I started writing different talks. Cool. It really didn't matter. And then I was like, all right, I started to feel like the talks didn't matter themselves. Let me go ahead and just do the work that I'm doing, but maybe I should bail out of giving conferences since it doesn't feel like they're providing any value. And then that guy that's sitting in the all black room with the black hat on came up to me, and we were having a conversation, and literally he told me this at a conference that I was considering being my last conference. And I told him, he was like, you good? I said, I think I'm gonna stop. He said, stop what? I said, I think I'm gonna stop talking. You mean stop talking today? I said, no, give me conference talks. He said, why? I said, because I don't think that it's having an impact. And he looked me square in the face and he was like, the first time that I heard you speak was so eye-opening. I had no idea of that world that you introduced us to. And it fired me up. He was like, if you do that, you're going to lose so many other people that way who actually need to hear this. You should never stop talking. You should just continue to do it because what you're doing is valuable. And here it was. I was looking at the number of people attending the talks, engaging my success based on that, and not the actual impact that I was having on just one individual that may show up. So even if it was that one person in the audience, that one person would leave with an elevated experience and the knowledge that I imparted on them, hopefully in a positive way. And so I was just like, you know what? You're right, sir. You're right.
That's an argument I get into a lot with sponsors as to the dollar per head, and they don't see. I always combat it with like, cool. If I had Elon Musk in a room, would y'all pay $1,000 to come see him? And they're like, well, hell yeah. And I'm like, well, then your argument is crap. Like, it doesn't matter the number of people. It matters the engagement and what we got. And I'll double back on what you said, Homer. It was year 5, I think, for us, and we were considering throwing in a towel on that conference. And it wasn't financially stable. We were working all the time, and somebody had come up and said, if this goes away, my business probably goes away because we get most of our leads from this. And I was like, oh, we actually matter. So we often, get stuck into what we can't see or don't look for it because it's easy to look at the numbers. It's easy to look at other things. Taylor, I'm going to flip the bit to you now. If you could ask anybody a question on here, what would you ask?
Oh man, I would say, probably framing it in the eyes of the individual. I know there's a lot of individuals sitting on the sidelines wanting to speak, and so how did you get involved into speaking? What was y'all's first steps? Maybe what was your first experience, first conference? How did y'all navigate that? A lot of people who are interested, but they don't know where to begin.
First time I thought about doing it was after I heard Chris DeMars give an accessibility speech at Connect Tech.
I love Chris.
And I'm sitting there, I'm like, hold up, wait a minute. He's talking about the same stuff that I'm speaking about. And until then, it just never dawned on me that I could even do it. I could even just sign up and go. I thought it was always this closed-knit network of folks who just went around and did this. This was their job. This was their profession. This is what they chose to do. And that was it. Granted, I had done bar camps before and had gone to other conferences. It just never dawned on me that me personally, I would be able to step into that space and do it on the level that we're doing it now. Until, it's like I talked with Chris and I said, you know what? I'm going to give an accessibility talk next year. And he was like, go for it. And sure enough, first, tech conference talk, big tech conference talk that I gave was at Connect Tech, all because it was like I submitted my info, put together my talk, and went for it. But I had to plan everything out, though. It wasn't just, by the seat of my tail or anything like that. And a friend of mine asked me, he goes, what do you want to speak about? I said, I'm really not sure. He said, what can you talk about right now without any preparation and just go? Yeah. I was like, oh, that's easy. And I dropped a couple of things. He said, now you know what you can speak about. Now you know what you're comfortable with. So that's how I started.
Yeah, I kind of have a similar thing where I went. I'm a big Vue guy, so I went to the Vue conference the last couple of years before the pandemic, and the first year that I went, it had such an impact on me because it was a one-track conference. It was all about Vue. I learned so much, but I left there after seeing a talk about starting a meetup group, like a local Vue meetup group, and I'm like, oh, I could do that. Why not? I've got 5 or 6 people on my team interested in this. I'm sure there's other people. So I came back and started a meetup group that we used to do month, and like I said, it grew, but we haven't done anything since the pandemic, and trying to revitalize that has been really hard. But that was the first year that I went to the conference. The second year, I came back and I was like, I'm gonna present at this. I sat through enough sessions. I was like, I can do this. All I need is a chance. So I submitted, and I didn't get in. Okay, you didn't get in. Move on to the next one. So I got in. I think I submitted to 10 different conferences. Shot in the dark. I have very few followers. I don't have a YouTube page. I'm not creating content. Like I just do this for me. But somebody gave me a chance, and that's all it took. Just one person to say yes. I mean, you're going to go through multiple people telling you no, and fine, but that shouldn't deter you from trying to make an impact, because you know you have something important to say. All you need is a stage and an audience to do it. Now, I could start a YouTube channel and just spit out my diatribe of thoughts, but that be helpful to the community, in my opinion. So, participating in a greater success of a conference has been really rewarding. Like I said, made a lot of friends, Homer included. I met that guy at Connect Tech. Like I said, the first time that he spoke, I was like, this is a world I have no training in. You know what I mean? And between him and DeMars, shout out to him if he's listening, and Todd Libby if he's listening. Like those guys have taught me so much about the accessibility community that I'm like, oh, I need to go to these things, because you never know what's going to pop up in your head or what you're going to hear at a conference just by taking a chance and going to a session that it could spark an idea. You never know. But my thing was, I had a story and I wanted to tell it, figure out the right venue for it, and I thought that conferences were the way to do it. So let's see that through. Let's blast out your talk to as many people as possible, and the ones that say yes, you 10%, and hopefully walk away satisfied. But it's like Evel Knievel. You get paid for the attempt, right? Not everything's gonna go 100%. So you just gotta dust yourself off and do it again.
Well, I think we all need to start a YouTube channel and give James a little run for his money. James, I'm going to turn it to you now. If you could ask a question to anybody here, what would you ask?
I don't really know how to phrase it. My interest in people goes like much deeper than surface level. So there was that Becca answered, and it was like memorable moments from that conference. And
I was going to save that for the end.
Oh, my bad.
I'll
do a
right
little
into
bit
it
of it now.
No, lead right into it. Good segue. Thanks.
Yeah, we're in tune. The one in Austin in January, and that was super true. So it was a big step for me of kind of gradually that I talk about on stage, which I done one back in November that was kind of to this, but not quite as deep as this one. And because talk, obviously very vulnerable people haven't seen that. Taylor and I got to see a preview of that a few years ago at KCDC, so I kind of knew what was coming and still hit pretty hard. And Clark, all the things that you shared. So all of the things Becca said, like plus one of that in terms of moments. But those are the types of things, like getting to know someone per level is like everything to me. Like going to conferences is not just surface value. Like I know someone that I could to or like do a follow-up with or whatever, like really interested in the deeper connection. So actually here's an idea I have, and hopefully no one there's Humans of New York is like a book and a TikTok and all these things where they just interview people on the street. Like I've done these interview things at conferences before of random questions, what's your favorite language or framework or whatever, which is fun. I'd also like to take that a bit and like, again, I don't know how to phrase it yet, but like what's your story? Like what's some of the things that have had the biggest impact your life and your career, etc. Those answers just get me really excited, and I feel like take relationships to a new level. So I guess it'd be something along those lines. And eventually, like I said, my goal is to kind of like build up an accumulated list of answers and videos of developers of so and so, like developers of conference, developers of city, developers of country, developers of the world. I think that sort of stuff. Do.
Yeah, there's all kinds of things I could tag on with that. JD, what would you say is one of your kind of vulnerable, most memorable kind of interactions? Conference,
it was
community, TC, whatever.
It was actually it was a tweet that you sent out the other. What do you get the most out of conferences? The first thing that popped into my head was your followers when you not the number of followers, not how many people that you got to follow you on Twitter or Facebook or whatever social media it is, but those people that you have a conversation with and you're like, hey, I should follow you because I want to keep this conversation going. And that's pretty much how I've operated over the last 2 years, is that to my first tech conference speaking at knowing absolutely no one. I went there on a whim, paid for it myself. I was just like, I have to do this. And I was completely open the entire weekend. I hung out with I talked to anybody and everybody. And I think part of it was just being starved for conversation during COVID. But that's just my personality. I'm like that anyway. So going in and then like I left Connect Tech with like 10 new followers. I was like, oh my God, I'm here I go. I'm making it now. But those are the people that I interact with on a daily basis. You know, they post something, I like it or comment on it, or it's an inside joke, or, you know, whatever. You just keep that relationship alive. I think that's one of the most important things that I've gotten out of going to conferences over the last few years, is just the connections being made and following up after the fact. Not only that, but having a network of people that you could reach out to in case you do get stuck. Like one of the connections I made, I went to a conference in London in November, and I was rebuilding my website in Nuxt. Well, it turns out the creator of Nuxt is sitting right next to me, and I'm having an issue, and I'm like, hey man, do you mind like looking at my crap code for like 2 seconds and seeing what I'm doing wrong? And ever since then, I know that if I ever have a problem, I could reach out to that person. Now I'm not going to sit there and bug him every day, but it's
every other day.
One of those, yeah, every other day. And you know, the same thing, like learning about accessibility. Like I know I've got a group of people that I can rely on if I ever need anything in that accessibility world, because I don't necessarily know everything about it. And I think that's a really important aspect that people don't realize, is what's the long-term effect of going to a conference like that.
Yeah, certainly there's a long game for sure.
Yeah.
I've been at it for over a decade, so I'll let you know when I finally see it. Becca, your turn.
What was the question?
What's a memorable or vulnerable kind of
That's
experience
the
takeaway?
question I answered in the chat.
Done.
And for me, I just wanted to reiterate what I said in the chat. It's those vulnerable moments for sure. You know, when James was giving the story about his dad, Clark, when you were sharing the story about your son and about your injury, I mean, all of those moments help us to connect in ways that are way different from any other experience that you can have doing any kind of online conference. And those are the moments that help you to identify, like, hey, this is a person that I can trust. This is a person that's my friend. And this is a person I can turn to when I have a problem. And those have been the most impactful in terms of me moving forward and advancing and growing in the things that I'm doing. Grow much better when you feel like you're in a supportive place, and knowing that I have all of these people around me, you know, not necessarily like physically present, but I know that they're there when I need them and if I have a question or I'm going through something hard. So those moments really made that conference probably one of the most impactful experiences of my life.
Homer.
There's been a few, but the one, I think the one that really was fun was this past that conference, because that conference is the first one that I've ever been to that was also family oriented. And so I love the aspect that not only I can come to the conference, but my wife and kids can come as well. Now, granted, the environment is definitely a family-friendly environment, but the conference is as well. And watching the little one run around there and just get involved in everything and meeting all these new people and just being a ham the entire time, for the longest, it's been me at these conferences, and it's just been us just geeking out, but being able to geek out at the same time with him. I mean, yeah, we do it here. Like, he sees daddy on the computer and he's like, he wants to come up here, where he sees me write music and he wants to come write music. But I actually have him in an environment where, I'm hanging out with all of you and introducing him to these new ideas that are going on, because now he actually gets to partake in that. Watching him in that little space was freaking amazing. Even like afterwards, when we went out to the campfire after dinner, and it's like you see all these grown adults walking over the campfire, and here's this little 3-year-old just like, I belong here too. That for me, that was dope, because it showed him that that's not just some event that's going to happen off on the side that he can only see but can't be a part of. But he can join in if he wants to. So, that was big for me.
I was going to say, my family came to that Wisconsin last year, and my boys are 10 and 7, and they had the greatest week of their life. I mean, any place with water slides and video games and STEM activities for them all day. I mean, come on. That my kids had a blast, and they heard like my wife and I talking about our summer plans, and the first thing they asked was, "Are we going to the conference again? It's going to be awesome." So you may see him again.
Yep.
Taylor.
Oh man. I think this is gonna sound like cheesy. It's just the intentional conversations. I think people were just, I don't know, that it's hard to like put my finger on it, but the vibe. I mean, the vibes were immaculate, right? I'm just gonna say that. I think that's the best way to say it. I just think, Clark, props to you. I truly believe that we as people attract the type of community that we, I guess, portray. Does that make sense? So how you put yourself out into the world, how you show up in this world, is a type of people that show up to these conferences or show up to your community. And the people that showed up at that conference, it was very different feeling. I think a lot of it was the kid atmosphere. Clark, I mean, it was one of the most immaculate stage setups I've ever seen. I literally felt like I was camping. I hate camping, right? So it's like that was incredible. The people were kind. They were engaged. Like I had so many questions after my talk about this and this. I was like, holy, like people were just so much more present. And I think that one, Clark, that goes to you and what you've built and the people that you attract to this type of conference. But I also think, going back to why you need to attend these things, man, I think people are just ready to go. I think people are just ready to meet people. I think people want to hug. I think people want to be in community again. And so I think that was my favorite part. It just was a very, very cohesive group.
Well, I certainly appreciate the kind words. I'm gonna touch on a few things that each of you said, because I think they're important in more than one way. James, or no, I'm sorry. Yeah, I think it was somebody talked about exposure. It was you, Homer. One of the reasons why we do this with family is to show others that there's somebody like them that can do a thing, right? There's somebody in a place that, oh, look, that's an option for me. There's others like me. But at the same token, the getting to know people, to James, to your point, like I don't want superficial people hanging around. I want people that I can call up and have a conversation with, right? And I know, Taylor, you and I have talked a bunch. Becca, you and I have talked a bunch. There's been, many tears kind of shed over the, weeks, months that's there. And it's just, Taylor, to your point about attracting the things that kind of raise a tide that lifts all boats, like that's, I want to meet your guys' spouses. I want to meet your kids. I want to see them grow up, to think that, I have a relationship with James's wife because she's in the industry kind of in a different capacity, if you will, right? And we all get to celebrate the fact that he's going to have a kid or that they're going to have a kid. And we've seen that happen, over the past decade. We've watched kids grow up. We see them go to college. They come back. They've helped. We've even hired one, for a summer. And I think it's cool to see it all happening. And I appreciate the fact that all of you put yourselves out there to make it happen, because without people like you doing it, it wouldn't work. So thank you for that. And, thank you for taking that to all of the walks of places that you go and do it. With that, we're already over time, by a half hour. And I know Taylor's got to get his hair somewhere. Any parting closing thoughts? We're going to create a Taylor hair YouTube account.
I think we need to create like a Taylor hair emoji. That we
Stop.
can
Oh,
Not
yes.
YouTube. Not YouTube.
Or like a
Shut up,
filter.
Homer.
Yeah.
Shut up, Homer. Not YouTube.
Yeah, no, it's on. It's on.
No, Clark, thank you for putting this together. And, thank you for just creating something special. And for those of you who are watching now in the future, you need to show up to that conference event. After going to one, you need to show it. Also, go buy his coffee.
New
It's
batch
really good.
dropping soon.
It's really, really good. It's really good coffee. And he's the official coffee sponsor of Guidance Counselor 2.0. So I had to make that
Oh,
plug.
look, there's a name drop. All right. Well, with that, I'm gonna close like James quick. You need to like and subscribe, smash that bell, follow me on Twitter and TikTok, and all the friends and the things. Buy coffee and tickets and just go be you. So thank you all for being part of this. Congratulations to everybody except James for speaking this summer. I can't wait to see you. Taylor is keynoting, so rock on. I'm looking forward to the energy there. Just so you know, the stage is actually part of Naked and Afraid. We just left the naked part out, so it's just the afraid stage. With that, love you all. I appreciate you being here. Have a kick-ass week. And for those that are on the stream, thank you for